Here's the story of hundreds of thousands of SLOs across the globe. It's a real story about how we introduced service level objectives at Elastic and how we've been operating with service level objectives as a common language between stakeholders in the business and in the engineering field at Elastic. It's a system that's in production for a bit over a year now, so there are some learnings that will be shared throughout the talk. So I'm Panos, I'm a systems engineer with over 20 years of experience in different types of companies, but my main areas of expertise are around systems architecture and security. I'm currently a distinguished engineer at Elastic, and I'm working on building a world-class product in the observability space. So today we're going to cover what's the operational environment and business context around building a system and operating a system at the scale that we do at Elastic. What is strategic planning that we had to go through to introduce several changes on both operationally and in business and human processes. How we came to define the service boundaries and limitations, and some insights around the system that manages SLOs at scale. Finally, we're going to discuss what it takes to empower actual engineering teams getting the pager for their services and go over the lessons learned. So some business context around Elastic. Elastic is a public company, so those are public data. The revenue as reported for fiscal year 24 was 1.26 billion, and the growth of the cloud business of Elastic is a bit over 27%. We expect that the cloud business of Elastic is going to surpass as a percentage become the main contributor of revenue at Elastic. It's the strongest side of business nowadays. Elastic Cloud have been offering this hosted service for quite some time now, a bit over 80 years. It's a great service, empowering practitioners to deploy a managed Elastic stack in the cloud. It's, as you can tell, a little bit complex to get started. You need to know quite a bit about Elastic's architecture and to be able to provision a system that works well for your use case. One of the main pain points of customers have been that they more or less require a center of excellence around Elastic in order to be able to operate at scale. So we thought about solving that by providing a new type of offering. We call it the serverless offering, where we just provide you with 3 options, 3 current verticals by Elastic, and you select the type of project and you get started. It's a search, observability, or security for now. But what does that change mean operationally? Primarily, it means that the customer should not care about any operational aspect about their deployments, their projects. We abstract any type of physicality away from the customer. They don't need to care about the sizing and doing exercises beforehand around the type of use case that they have and the margins of scale that they expect to achieve. And they are, more importantly, no longer co-responsible for the operation of their service. In the managed offering, the Elastic Cloud hosted offering by Elastic, customers are still required to set some thresholds around auto-scaling. They're still required to monitor their setup for whatever service level objective they might have, and also exercise their own DR strategies. We provide primitives to enable those strategies around DR. We provide primitives to get to high availability for customers, but they are the ones who set it up, right? So the shift is that scaling and reliability become system properties. The other key difference is that we shift away from we shift towards a consumption-based pricing as opposed to paying for cores or storage. You now pay based on your consumption. Why that's important is it's important because business and customer incentives align. In the experience of Elastic Cloud Hosted, any type of breakthrough that we had, any type of technological breakthrough that would provide some improved price performance experience for the customer, if introduced very abruptly, it would mean that we have some headwinds in terms of revenue projection for the company. Like essentially you can do more with less. But with this new type of consumption-based pricing, we can shift the knob of how much we reduce price for customers, enjoying like a less pricier offering, or shift the knob towards increasing Elastic's margin. So net, everyone wins with this consumption-based pricing. Any type of breakthrough that we achieve is immediately available in the serverless offering for customers, and then we get to enjoy higher margins. Customers get to enjoy lower bills and better performance. In order to support that type of change, we had to go through many architectural changes. I'm not going to go through all of those, but what's important for this talk is that we had to come up also for a system responsible for inferring customer happiness end to end. And that would be a system that would also infer customer happiness on a per individual customer basis. not a sea of elastic stack, let's say, deployments and how they operate, but what it means for the singular customer that operates a service. The other important thing to mind is that at what scale that needs to happen. Elastic Cloud is deployed over 60 geographies across the 3 major providers plus IBM Cloud and has dozens of thousands of customers. When we introduced serverless, the SRE organization was about 58 people. So the SRE team could never scale to support that operating model. We would never be able to offload all that operational aspect that was distributed across many customers and their center of excellence around Elastic. We couldn't just absorb all of that, all the type of operational toil and procedures. And in fact, they shouldn't. What we needed to come towards to was getting the engineering teams responsible for building the systems to be able to carry the pager and not drown in alerts or toil. So what's next? We had to prepare for organizational change. Imagine that Elastic a few years back did not have developers on call unless for specific escalation scenarios. Today, every engineer that operates a service at Elastic Cloud is on call for their service. Suddenly, carrying a pager came with a lot of anxiety for engineering teams. So we had to navigate that type of complexity and dispel some fear, uncertainty, and doubt. In order to do that, we had to attract, let's say, key engineering leaders, align towards the common goal, and then test our plans along with HR, legal, and finance, navigate the complexity around local laws, compliance, and what have you, and then come up with a rollout plan and test the waters while iterating on the procedure. The other important thing is that what I call drawing the box. We came up with a way to describe our services, our new services, our serverless systems, service capabilities as a box. That box provided a set of known limitations and quotas that helped align engineering teams and sales in the field teams and have the same type of expectations, align on reasonable SLAs that we can offer to customers, and also prevent any type of mishap by onboarding a customer that had different expectations than what the system at a given state could provide. When we saw that, for example, serverless was not at the stage that could absorb a specific use case, we could divert them over to our hosted experience for those very demanding customers. And the other thing is that by having this drawn box, we can then expand the box as automation and self-healing capabilities of the system allows it, right? And that has some intentionality with it. We get to decide whether to increase the box and facilitate more customer use case or keep it more narrow and proceed with that. The other important thing in order to get to a place where we can serve the customers in the new operational model was introducing a production readiness review checklist. I won't go over the whole lot that is included in the PRR, but I've highlighted that SLOs, monitoring SLOs adherence is a critical thing. The other thing that helped with coming up with a system that we were confident we could support operationally was having phased product launches. We had the private beta phase where we onboarded a set of friendly customers, and then we had the ability to close and even discover new gaps in production readiness review, and also checked our service level objectives and our burn rates and see for what our compliance was. We shortly after followed with a public beta, still iterating, still improving adherence to our service level objectives goals, and adjusting the box that I mentioned earlier around what are the services capabilities. And then the phase that we are today, which is the general availability phase, service level agreements apply. We're confident that we hit our service level objectives, and the operational workload from the previous phases were at reasonable levels and continues as such. The other thing that's important when setting up some SLOs and alerting is drawing clear escalation lines. There is always the challenge around who owns what in a system, especially a complex system such as Elastic Cloud, and when and how do I escalate to relevant teams. So we came up with some improvements, like having a service inventory. We mandated that every alert had an attached runbook and routing towards the proper team. And we also instituted proactive and reactive flows for an alert. Proactive being like we've noticed something that customers have not realized yet it's happening or is not clearly at risk of burning an SLO high burn rate. We also came up with incident and management processes that we simplified and came up with also a continuous improvement plan based on the learnings that we had operationally. Now, on the revamping of incident management processes, that's also an important and key thing. Elastic had an experienced SRE team. They've managed quite a bit of incidents. They had like a very high severity incidents under their belt, well-oiled machine. However, for new engineering teams coming on call, we wanted to simplify the process, simplify the root cause analysis format, and also provide on-call training for development teams. Following that, we came up with a system to leverage data for instant trends and be able to provide some set of analytics to further improve the service as we go. In order to not reinvent the wheel or get the opportunity cost of coming up with a system of our own, we also leverage the vendor solutions to help with incident management. Furthermore, in order to allow engineering teams to love SLOs, we gave them access to systems like this internal development portal that holds our service discovery system, a robust CI/CD pipeline with all batteries included, and that includes also quality gates based on SLO burn rate checks, and some type of workflow execution to be able to debug even in prod without issues, whether it's access issues, compliance issues, or simply tooling not existing type of issues. The outcome was that we ensured that we had low-risk deployment paths for development teams to roll out their code. And I know many of you are SREs in this room. The main contributing factor for an incident is almost always some type of change. So having those robust systems that also check for SLO burn rates was critical. The other key thing that we're going to cover today is providing observability as a service for internal development teams. We didn't want to go through one centralized observability team all the time. We didn't want to bottleneck on a team like that. So we had a team to actually provide observability, elastic observability in this case, we are dogfooding as a service. So we gave the capability for teams to actually describe their SLAs and what's the bar for their SLOs. We gave them a way to describe their dashboards as code, the alert rules and routing as code, everything managed through a GitOps type of pipeline and consumed through a single pane of glass, one Kibana interface that covers the entirety of Elastic Cloud's presence. And that's consumed through a feature called cross-cluster search. The key thing here is that we've managed, after rigorous repetition, internal evangelism, to get SLOs to act as a common language between teams and business goals. So at the high level, our SLOs, we like to think that they translate to customer happiness. So it's up to the product teams, it's up to the development teams to actually describe what good looks for their customers, right? And then we describe it as code and monitoring its adherence over time. The Elastic SRE team maintains a single pane of glass cluster for the entirety of Elastic Cloud. It's, to my knowledge, the largest cluster like that in the globe. Not in terms of ingestion rate or data retention. We have customers that go like multiple times over that, but in terms of geographical footprint. 180 clusters across 60 point of regions, all connected through cross-cluster search, is one big, let's say, system. As of 2 hours ago, over 350,000 active SLOs are being tracked. We used to have more. We realized that some of them were not that significant and were chopped off, but we've actually tested in production with over 1 million SLOs in operation. I have another talk in SREcon that looks quite a bit like this one, that I illustrate like over 1 million SLOs actively tracked in production. Now, to get to the meat of that system, it's pretty simple system at a high level. It only leverages primitives available in Elasticsearch, so there's no third-party system required to actually operate this. We have a service that's called Transform Service that is responsible for acting on the source observability data and transform them into data that can be then indexed into what we call the SLI ingest indices. That's done through an ingest pipeline by Elastic, and basically what it does is it breaks down the data in a format that makes sense for SLI tracking and provides also an ingested timestamp and holds the SLI indices as a time series. Then there is another level of transforms that do the summarization to track the SLO adherence over time. Finally, that transform populates an SLO summarization index, and that's what's consumed for alerting purposes and for operation for SRE practitioners to actually, or developer teams to actually see how their service fare in production. Using Elasticsearch help us also build trivially a group by feature where instances of applications can be partitioned by a specific field. So if we have, let's say, tens of thousands of Elasticsearch instances belonging to different customers, we can group by SLOs by, let's say, customer ID, and are able to track individual SLOs, analyze and SLO adherence on a per customer basis, which is what we were after. Obviously, the scaling limits are the scale limits of Elasticsearch, and we had to come to a way to scale even further than one single Elasticsearch cluster, and that's through federated SLOs working in our cross-cluster search environment. The basic principle of this idea is that we should move the computation phase on the extraction phase and transform phase closer to the source data, so closer to those remote environments, those remote clusters in the world, and give access through our main single pane of glass just to the summarization information. SREs and developers can view all of our SLOs in one single pane of glass, in one source, and then also have access. They can click through and go to the destination cluster if they want to do some deeper analysis on the raw data. Now, this single pane of glass that we call it like the overview cluster is one of the largest cross-cluster search environments in the world, as I mentioned. And using these transforms featured by Elasticsearch there was a real battle test for the SLO product. So we have like great confidence in its ability, and something that we also offer to customers. Like anyone can actually use Elasticsearch and Elasticsearch Observability and build a similar type of SLO system. SLO is a first-class citizen in Elastic's product line. So we tested really both the SLI transforms primitives and the cross-cluster search primitives. That's a view of, that's the intro view when you hit over the SLO application in our overview cluster, illustrating how things are going. Obviously, not everything in reality is at that level of adherence, but today was a happy day, let's say. Okay, and that leads us to, how do we further improve the operational aspect of Elastic Cloud? Now that we have a system that can tell us over time how things are faring, we needed to ensure that we keep the pressure on operational excellence. So we introduced some review mechanism. We have an operational KPI review meeting every week with CXOs, VPs, and tech leads and engineers of any level and kind joining, where we review customer-facing SLOs, we review incidents, and we review incidents and root cause analysis, which is like one of the key things that helps us improve even further. Through that system, we leverage analytics and trend analysis around how SLOs are faring, and we decide whether we need to put some extra emphasis in a given system when and how critical that is. It's somehow more easy to quantify nowadays. Yeah. With that, main takeaways when you're trying to build a system where you expect heavy operational workload. Engage leaders, engage them early, understand who is your first team, your peer team, and give them a steering wheel. Giving them autonomy and also accountability is what works best. The other thing is simplifying and communicating strategy very clearly, keep repeating it, parroting it, why it's important, how it helps us, how it helps the customer, right? And the other thing is, it's not just about establishing a system that tracks SLO levels over time. It's about giving the development teams a set of supporting system and processes to enable them to own those SLI values, own a great SLO track record, right? So as you saw in the presentation, we provided a ton of things for free. Observability for free if you deploy on Elastic Cloud, several systems around safe deployments, compliance review mechanism, remote execution with controls type of systems. All of that help engineering teams to actually love on call. Lastly, and more importantly, reliability is a system property. So the best way to design for reliability is on the early phases of a product. It's super important to understand what exactly the SLO that you want to achieve is, and going through reviews very early with the help of the SRE teams is really helpful. Establishing SLOs as a closing statement, as a common language is what's the most critical thing. If you get the product management team, the sales team, the VP, CXO levels be talking about SLO levels, this is where you know that you have succeeded. This is where you know where you can put emphasis in the future to further improve the systems. And with that, thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you. Great talk. Thanks for that. Very interesting point about grouping these SLOs, right? I was trying to understand how do you guys deal with these thousands of SLOs in order to those SLOs to drive reliability improvement. Obviously, focusing on thousands of them is hard at the same time. So grouping them, allowing for them to be grouped is a good idea. So I wonder, we have a similar problem. When you look at a number of SLOs group, let's say there's hundreds of SLO groups, how do you calculate the SLO out of that? Are you looking at the average? Are you looking at the minimum or maximum of that?
That's a good question. In general, it's not, doesn't make any mathematical sense to try to provide percentile aggregations, right? So you cannot, it's not a meaningful number to do like average of some type of SLO value. So instead what we do, we have different SLOs to actually go over a sea of applications and track that over time. And while the features where we partition by customer is what matters to the customer, we also have SLOs that track the overall adherence of an SLO target of a system, of a larger system in its entirety. For example, if we say that we review the data storage system of Elasticsearch, right? We want to track it on a per customer basis, but also track it as a whole. And we have much lesser tolerance for errors on the big picture thing, but also like the per customer SLO does not let us leave the customer in despair in the sea of aggregates, let's say. So if a small customer is having pain, that will be bubbled up. It's just, if there is general pain, that will be bubbled up faster. It'll be like, that's a step one. We need to do something about it.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
More questions? All right. Thank you so much.
That's it.
And so we are going to have the lunch right now. Just as a reminder, the food is by the kitchen. You can queue up for this and you can come back to the screens to eat as you wish. And we meet for the next sessions in an hour. Thank you.